Good morning, everyone, and welcome to ICOS Peer Learning Call. I'm Carrie McCann-Botel, President of the Iowa Council of Foundations. Today's call is part of our year-long quarterly learning series. The calls feature colleagues across the state who will share their experiences with you on each quarter's topic. A full listing of the topics and recordings of past calls can be found by logging on to the Iowa Council of Foundations website and clicking on the Community Foundations tab and the Peer Learning Call Series link. For today's topic, we will hear from several colleagues sharing examples of communication strategies that they've used to share their work with their constituents in a meaningful way. We have 4 colleagues with us today. I'll do an overview of who you'll hear from, and then we'll get started. First, we'll hear from Sherry Ristow, President and CEO of the Community Foundation of the Great River Bend, who will share how they are using an outside consultant and how that has been part of their effective communication strategy. Next, we'll hear from Andrea Kingle, Marketing Associate at the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa, who will talk with us about the social media strategy they employ, and in particular, the Good Things Happening photo contest that they run. Next, we'll hear from Kelly Dix, Director of Operations with the Pottawatomie County Community Foundation. Kelly will share about their recent CEO transition when their CEO retired last fall and the hiring of their new CEO last month. She'll share with us how they communicated to their donors in the community during their transition in leadership. And finally, we'll hear from Elizabeth Hackbarth, Director of Development at the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa. Elizabeth will share the story of their affiliate, the Waverly Community Fund, and talk with us about the communication around the Stories for Good event that Waverly hosted for their donors. We will have each of our speakers share their information and stories, and then open the call up at the end for participants to ask questions or to add to the discussion at the end of the call. Before we get started, I'll ask again that you please just mute your phone line so we don't have that feedback, and if you're speaking or want to ask a question at the end, be sure to unmute. And also, if you ask a question, make sure that you identify yourself and your community foundation so we know who the question is coming from. And with that, I will go ahead and turn the call over to Sherry Ristow to get us started. Sherry?
Yes, good morning, everybody. So as Carrie said, we've been asked to talk a little bit about our decision to use an outside source for our communications. And so the reason, that all came about when we had a change in our communication staff, and it was early on. I had just it was within my first year after coming to the Community Foundation, and I really just wanted to really buy a little time to kind of assess staffing, organizational needs, all of those kinds of things. And so we reached out to a communications firm. The name is the NewMad Group, and they had, within like the last year or maybe 2 years before that, had really redone or revamped our website and had really done a lot of work with us. So they knew us, and we had a relationship with them. And so after meeting with them, I signed I think it was just a 6-month contract initially to engage with us on our communication needs. So we didn't do a search. We didn't do a RFP for a communications firm. We really just looked to someone that we had a relationship with, and so that's how it started, and that's how that came about. So we are still contracting with them. In fact, now we sign, I think we're in our 3rd 12-month contract with them. And I just need to say they are doing a great job for us, so much so that at this time we are not considering bringing communications in-house or hiring communications on the staff as a staff position here. We have several staff who I think have a great communications background, so that is really helpful. but to have NewMad, I think the number one benefit to having an outside source is that while we have a main contact, Ted Stevens is one of the principals of the NewMad group. So Ted is our key contact, but he is surrounded by all kinds of services, whether it be web, graphics, graphic design, writers. He is surrounded as a firm with additional services that we certainly benefit from, rather than just having one person. I also need to tell you that NewMad is a bit of an exception, I think. I don't know that this would be a long-term relationship, and that it's become without this exception. And the exception is that Ted Stevens is originally, the Quad Cities is his hometown. He is from here. And so his family is here, and he loves the Quad Cities. I mean, he really loves it. And he does live in Boston, and he also has a residence in, or his partner is in Rapid City, South Dakota. So they do a lot of work in South Dakota from Sioux Falls to Rapid City, and then some. I think they're actually doing some work for the statewide community foundation there as well. And he has experience working with a number of not just community foundations but nonprofits. He's got great experience in fundraising, event planning. They just bring a lot of expertise and a lot of help. So one of the things that Michelle was asking is, what are they doing that we couldn't do in-house? Well, we're not doing any of it. We're choosing not to do any of this in-house. So basically our year-long contract includes everything from writing our e-newsletter. We have a monthly e-newsletter. At one time they were doing our affiliate e-newsletter. We brought our affiliate e-news back in-house, but we certainly are using a format and whatever that NewMad set up for us. They're doing Ted is helping with my monthly blog, or what we call my reflection. They were a part of even helping with our strategic plan thinking, and we have a specific goal around wanting to increase public awareness of the Community Foundation, and so that's a strategic goal for us. And so in addition to our annual grant contract with them, we've engaged in a secondary contract with them to help us with our consideration of rebranding and marketing. But I should go back and say another very key thing they do for us as part of their annual contract is the writing of news releases, all news releases for the Community Foundation. But probably the most important thing that they've brought to us is strategic story placement of those news releases. So it's just not just the writing of stories and news releases, it's the placement and where we place those, whether they're the newspaper, our e-newsletter, or potentially when we do we're still looking at a report to the community, or what we used to call an annual report. So, and also radio. I mean, placement in radio. We now have what do you call it? We are underwriting with the public radio station here, and so they put all of those sound bites or those messages together in terms of what we're getting out there via underwriting for both actually the radio station, and we also did a grant to our public television station for some of their veterans work that they're doing, and we're underwriting that as well through a grant. So just do a lot for us in media relations, and certainly helping us keeping our current website up to date. However, it is our intent, and working with them, we hope to launch a new website, within in less than a year, based on our rebranding and what we're looking at in terms of new messaging from the Community Foundation. So I hope that is what you wanted, Michelle.
Thanks,
That
Carrie.
was great, Carrie. Thank you. I know I have a couple questions for you, but I'm going to save them till the end after we hear from our other speakers. So I'll go ahead and turn things over to Andrea with the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa.
Hi, good morning. I will be talking about our Good Things Happen photo contest this morning. It's relatively new still. We've done it 2 years in a row, and I think I'll just start by talking about how we came up with the idea and began it. So in 2018 was our 60th anniversary celebration, and we wanted a way to celebrate our last 60 years, but also get our community involved, just to highlight all the good things happening around us. So we decided on a photo contest, which took place only in our Black Hawk County area, and it was a way to invite the community to send us photos of the good that they saw around them. And to award those photos that we saw and the good, the first year we gave out 60 micro grants, which was a lot, but really awesome to see every week of that contest that was 6 weeks long, grants being awarded. And then at the end of the contest, we gave out 2 grand prizes to these photos. So the people who submitted their photos got to pick a nonprofit that they loved, and that micro grant or that big grand prize went to that nonprofit. So it was a really great way to see the community really support nonprofits they cared about through us. And it gave us a lot of good publicity to highlight our 60th anniversary. So that's kind of the scope of the contest itself. But a lot of the great benefits around it were social media increase. So our Facebook page that year, because most of the contest took place on our Facebook page, the photos get uploaded there. We increased our page audience by over, I think it was close to 400 Facebook likes on our page, which was a big deal for us because we had just started getting our social media up and running that year. And we got a lot of interaction on Facebook as well, of people commenting and sharing photos with their friends about the good happening around them. Additionally, we got a lot of television promotion as well. Our local TV station picked up the story and really focused in on all the good work our foundation was doing with our nonprofits. And our area nonprofits got really engaged too. So they would reach out to their people, their audiences, and their stakeholders and tell them to submit photos. That way they could get support as well. But it was a great way to see our nonprofits really engaging with us and with their stakeholders to highlight all the good work they were doing. And then we did do the contest a second year. And this past year, in 2017, we narrowed down the contest a little bit to only 4 weeks long. And we invited the community again in Black Hawk County to submit photos, and we only gave out 4 smaller grants. So those grants were $500 each, and each week the photo that got the most likes on Facebook got a grant. And then at the end of the contest, at our yearly celebration, we gave away 2 grand prizes that were picked by a panel of judges to really focus in on the pictures they thought showed the most good. So that was the difference between the 2 years, and we're still today kind of readjusting and reevaluating the way we want to do this contest. We really think it was a great way to build excitement around all the good that we were doing as an organization and to get the community involved. But there are tweaks to be done as it's still a relatively new way of communicating and branding and showing support for everyone. So that's the overall general scope of that, and I would love to answer any questions or talk more with anyone who wants to hear more of the details. It was a pretty expansive contest to get up and running because it would be started from scratch with the whole idea. So I would love to brainstorm with anyone who wants to possibly do something similar at their foundation.
Great. Thanks so much, Andrea. I'm sure we'll have some questions at the end. And now we'll turn things over to Kelly Dick with the Potawatomi County Community Foundation.
Thanks, Carrie. Good morning. Carrie and Michelle asked me to speak briefly about our recent CEO transition. So this began last fall in September of 17. It's something that you certainly hope never happens and do not expect. But I want to give you a little bit of background on the timing and types of communication that we went out that kind of led us to where we are today. So we had a board meeting scheduled for Tuesday, September 19th, and early that morning I received an email from our CEO stating that he asked me to read that email out loud to our board members at that meeting in the afternoon, stating that he was diagnosed with leukemia and was going to take a leave of absence for health reasons. So at this time, our board was very stunned, as well as I, and we had a new board chair, but luckily he was amazing and really stepped up, as well as the rest of our board members. So our first step was to schedule an executive committee meeting just a few days later when it worked for everyone's schedule. And we drafted a letter to all of our donors and our potential donors from our board chair that kind of stated what was going on at the time, that our CEO was going to be on a leave of absence for health reasons. And another thing that really helped us navigate conversations kind of as the word got out and as we had community members stop by our office to ask how our CEO was doing and things like that, was that him and his family had started a Caring Bridge site, and that was wonderful because he gave us permission to share that kind of with anyone that had asked. And so then we didn't feel like we were kind of overstepping our boundaries and giving out information. We could just give that site. People could look at it on their own and kind of update themselves as they went. So that was wonderful. And so we did send out a letter to all of our donors and potential donors. Our goal was to be transparent and make sure that the community was confident in the Community Foundation during this transition time. And a few days later, of course, we had our local newspaper calling. So to make sure that we were respectful of Jerry's privacy and his family's privacy, we did pass that on. I contacted his wife, and so Jerry spoke directly with the newspaper reporter for the article that was published, which was nice. Late in October, Jerry did turn in, he officially retired, and we sent out a press release and another letter to all of our donors and community partners announcing that retirement, and also the formation of a search committee that would find a permanent president and CEO for the Community Foundation, and listed the names of the search committee as well. So prior to this happening, we had also started working with a marketing and communications consultant. And so during this transition time, we kind of added to her plate. We were having her review all of our communications that were going out and all of our press releases, so she helped with that during the time. And another thing that Jerry had asked us to do, which definitely makes sense, was just to tweak a few words that we used in our communication. So we always made sure that we used the word retired instead of resigned. And then when our new CEO was hired, it took a little bit longer than we expected. We were hoping to have someone on board at the beginning of February, and our new CEO ended up starting on April 30th, so it was a little bit longer. But in that press release, we were sure to include the word succeeds instead of replaces our former CEO, so that it was a little bit more friendly to him during this time of transition. And the great news is that he is healthy at this time, and he is continuing to serve as a consultant for us. So we also included that in the press release, especially for those people that had a great relationship with our former CEO, that they still wanted to kind of check in, see how he was doing, and be able to visit the office and see him every once in a while. And that's where we are today.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. I'm so happy to hear that Jerry is doing well. Now we'll turn to our fourth speaker, Elizabeth Hackbarth with the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa. Elizabeth?
Good morning, everybody. I am speaking on behalf of one of our affiliates, the Waverly Community Fund, this morning regarding a donor appreciation event that they hosted as a committee 2 years ago. They called it Stories for Good. And the goal of the appreciation event was to thank their donors and fund holders and show them what their money was doing in the community. So just a little bit of background about the event. They selected, I believe it was 6 different discretionary grants with broad interest areas. I think one was about a music program in the community. Another one was highlighting an organization that works with community members with disabilities. But anyways, they wrote stories for each one of those grants, and then they partnered with a local storyteller, which is so cool that they knew of, to come and read these stories to the guests at this event. They kept the stories really short and impactful, really creating a picture in everyone's mind on the good that was happening. They did take RSVPs. It was a dinner, so it was a whole dinner and program, and I think they even had a bar there, but it was a really nice evening. They partnered with certain businesses in the community to sponsor certain pieces of the evening. They said it was a great event, fabulous turnout. They even worked with a local printer to print nice programs for everyone highlighting those stories. So anyways, the long story short is that the event was put together pretty quickly. I think they came from conception to actual event day. It was only about 1.5 months. So looking back, the committee thought that their lost opportunity in communications was their follow-up plan for those that had attended. They did send thank you cards for all those that came, but the chair and the committee said that they wished they would have been more intentional in asking questions like, who else do you know that should be involved? Or if this evening inspired you, we'd love to visit with you more about how you can make an impact you want to see in the community. More intentional questions like that. So they didn't host this type of event last year, but this year I know they are planning to invite all of their donors, fund holders, professional advisors in their town to the award ceremony. It's where they give out the grants that they just assigned this month. So that's a different way for all of the donors and fund holders to hear the grant impacts in the community more directly from the grantees. But I think for them, a key learning point will be to find a way to capture the names and contact information of everyone that does attend so that they can, follow up and create a nice follow-up plan as a learned opportunity from the event 2 years ago. So that's a little bit about their event and remembering to follow up with those that and have a plan for those that did attend.
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth, and thanks to all of our speakers. I might go ahead and get us kicked off with the first question, then we'll open it up. Sherry, I've noticed that you're using several different electronic communication channels. You mentioned your blog, you've mentioned news releases, strategic story placement in your e-newsletters. Have you done anything to work with your with the company that you're working with to track any measurements on those things to see where you're getting strong engagement from your readers?
I'm going to ask Ann Calder, our Vice President of Development this year. I'm going to have her answer that question.
Okay.
Yeah, we do measure the audience reach of these pieces. We also they also do placement on social media, so he's keeping metrics on those and able to see what is getting a really good play and good placement through that as well.
Yeah, so we know the number of people who are opening up the e-newsletter, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So does that answer your question, Terry? We are tracking
Yeah, has
that.
anything risen to the top as, like your top priority or your top strategy?
Well, I'm going to go back and say, so we're just engaging with them to really help us with the new web, the web development and brand platform, which is really built off key messages that we are going to be rolling out in an we consider it a mission education campaign, and I think all the little things we've been doing have been leading up to that. And like I said earlier, their help in writing stories and news releases and then getting placement of those stories has been outstanding. In fact, I'm looking at just in the last couple of weeks, on a Thursday, May 10th, we were one of a grant that we made from a donor advised fund, and the whole story about working through second generation advisors who no longer living, helping them make a grant in the community, something that was important to their parents, which is a library, made the front page of the newspaper. It's just a heart tugger. It's a really cool story. So again, they wrote it up. And when I say help with placement, I mean Ted actually writes the email for us, and then one of us sends it out. So to the publisher or the editor or, whatever. And he's tracking, the placement of all of our newsletters, our news releases. And I remember one time saying, wouldn't this be a great article? And he said, yes, but they just did X, Y, Z, or we have to wait, I mean, he's really in tune to what the media is looking for, both newspaper, radio, and even TV. I mean, this particular story that made the front page of the newspaper also made TV. I mean, the local news station.
Great.
So
That's great to hear.
I think
Thanks,
that's
Sherry.
the biggest, yeah.
All right. I'll go ahead and open it up for any other questions for our speakers. Just make sure you unmute your line and introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Sarah from the Community Foundation of Greater Des Moines. I had a question for Northeast Iowa for their photo campaign. You talked about the success of that. I was just wondering, what did that look like in terms of numbers? We're thinking about something similar and just didn't know what capacity perhaps looked like.
Yeah, most of the numbers we tracked were social media based. Because one of our big goals was to gain a bigger social media following, which we did. So both years we gained over between 400 and 500 likes on our Facebook page specifically, but we've noticed increased traffic on our regular posts as well. So even non-related photo contest posts are gaining more attention because we made ourselves more public and aware, and people just knew who we were because they saw because of the contest. Yep, and we reached over, I think our post reached over 1,000 people on our data, on our analytics, which was great for us. That was a big increase. So does that answer your question at all?
Yeah, that's great. I guess I was curious about the actual number of photos submitted.
Oh, okay. Yep. Our first year, we had over 300 entries of photos, and we had over 100 nonprofits nominated to get those grants. So 100 different nonprofits, 300 entries. And then our second year, we did have a little decline in the submissions. It was more near the 200, a little lower than that, of entries. And I think the main reason that happened is because the first year we really focused on personal outreach. So a lot of our development staff reached out to people they knew in the community who were just people that were maybe local celebrities, kind of, and they really just pushed that along to their peers. Second year, we didn't focus as much as that personal outreach, and I think that had an impact. So we're going to look at that if we do decide to do the contest again of making one-on-one interactions. So
that's great. And I think a follow-up question to that, you mentioned that it got picked up by your local TV station. Was that something that you created? I'm thinking of the Today Show where the Hoda Cobb has their daily boost. Is that something where it was a regular every week or every day they were posting one of your photos, or just if they happened to see one that they liked?
No, they did an actual news story during a segment on, I think it was the evening news. So it wasn't a regular thing, but they did highlight it, that it was happening, and at the end they did share the results of who got the grand prizes for us.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, one last call for questions this morning. Okay, very good. Well, thanks again to all of our speakers, Sherry, Andrea, Kelly, and Elizabeth, for sharing about your communication strategies and some events that you've been hosting. We will be sure to post a link to this recording on our website in case other members of your staff or members of your affiliate teams would like to see that. Our next peer learning call will take place on August 15th, and we will cover the topic of fundraising events. Please look for information regarding the next PLC and the summer editions of the CS Snapshot e-newsletter, and be sure to mark your calendars to attend the annual Connect Community Foundations Conference on Tuesday, September 18th at the Hilton Garden Inn in Johnston. Registration will open for that conference in July. Thanks again for joining us, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.